The ride of the HBH Cowboy. The sun was sinking into the orange horizon of the Sahel, dust rising behind the hooves of a lone rider on a lean, dappled horse. His name was Offiong, HBH Cowboy, the last of an extinct breed, an African cowboy born in the rugged garden city of Nigeria, where tradition, style, survival, and grit shaped every heartbeat. Offiong had spent most of his life on horseback, guiding caravans through the scorched lands, trading livestock, guarding visions, and watching the world forget his kind. But in recent years, he found himself riding through a different kind of trail, not one paved by hooves and dust, but by desperation and death. Each morning he finds the signs: a tattered shoe, a cracked water bottle, a small journal half buried in the sand. Some days a body shriveled, nameless eyes staring at the sky, if still pleading for mercy. Offiong never used to cry. Offiong we knew never used to cry, but he began crying quietly beneath the rim of his wide-brimmed hat whenever he saw the remnants of dreams left to rot in the desert. He met Awa near the border of Agadez. She was 19, her skin burnt by the desert sun, her eyes hollow but alive. She had survived. She said, "We were 46 in the back of the truck." She whispered, voice cracking like dried earth. "We ran out of water on the third day. By the fifth, there were only 17 of us left." Offiong gave her water, bread, and shade beneath his old tent. She was on her way to Libya, she said, then to Italy, if she was lucky. He looked at her, this girl who had barely become a woman, and saw someone who should have been in school or dancing or dreaming of life, not escaping it. That night he sat by the fire and watched the embers drift into the dark. He thought of the boys buried by the travel companions, of the letters he found addressed to mothers who would never hear from their children again, of the promises traffickers made, golden cities, endless jobs, freedom, all lies. Offiong began to ride from village to village, town to town. He traded his gears for a microphone, his lasso for a voice. He gathered crowds under boab trees at dusty crossroads, in local mosques and churches, and with a quiet, piercing strength he spoke. "I have seen the bones of our sons in the desert. I have buried daughters who died with their passports clutched to their chests. I have heard the last words of boys who called for their mothers before the sea swallowed them. We are not cattle to be headed towards slaughter. We are Africans, brave, strong, and worthy of more than death at the sea." He begged his people not to trust the traffickers. He pleaded with parents not to sell their land to pay smugglers. He urged the youth to stay and fight to change, not to run from despair. But Offiong also had a message for the foreign governments. "I see and feel your pressure. I have seen how this has brought high levels of insecurity and citizens' reaction. This situation has a root which must be addressed diplomatically and wisely. You talk of borders while people die in deserts you do not see. You build walls while they bleed on your beaches. If you want to stop the migration issue, start with the roots. Bring jobs to the villages you directly or indirectly benefit from, not guns. Invest in their farms, not fences. Send books and vocational training instead of bullets. Help them dream in the towns and villages instead of spending heavily to process their deportation, so they do not have to drown trying to reach you. He spoke at local radio stations, and one day his words went viral. A clip of him, dust-covered, fierce-eyed, voice trembling with emotion, spread across Africa and beyond. Now, the world knows Offiong, the hope beyond harm cowboy, not for his cattle, but for his courage. He still rides, not for trade, but for truth. In his saddlebag, he carries photos of the lost folded letters and map drawn in hope. Wherever he goes, he reminds people, we must not measure freedom by the distance from home, but by the dignity we build where we are. And in every town, every crowd, one person stays behind after his speech, eyes wet, asking, what can I do? To which Offiong simply says, stay, build, live, and raise your voice louder than the ocean. The cowboy rides on, not to escape the past, but to give his people a future.